sonar contact appeared at 36,000 feet below sea level, moving upward at impossible speeds through water pressure that should have crushed any known vessel into scrap metal. But what made every man on the bridge of USS Virginia go silent wasn't the depth or the speed. It was the fact that our passive sonar was picking up what sounded like human voices singing in perfect harmony from something that should have been nothing but twisted wreckage at that crushing depth. The mission briefing had been classified at levels I'd never seen in my 15 years as a Navy SEAL. Captain Morrison had personally delivered the operation parameters in a secure compartment aboard USS Virginia, a Virginia-class attack submarine that had been modified with equipment I didn't recognize from any technical manual. "Gentlemen," Morrison had begun, his weathered face showing the strain of a career naval officer who'd been asked to do something that fell outside normal operational doctrine. "What I'm about to tell you violates several international treaties and puts all of us in legal territory that doesn't officially exist." The target was a research station at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the deepest point in Earth's oceans. Challenger Deep, 36,200 feet below sea level, where water pressure exceeds 1,000 times atmospheric pressure and temperatures hover just above freezing. It was a place where human technology had barely managed to place remote sensors, let alone establish permanent installations. But according to Morrison's briefing, there was something down there that had been broadcasting signals for the past 18 months. My team consisted of 4 specialists selected for deep-sea operations, myself as team leader and underwater demolitions expert, Petty Officer First Class Ashley Thompson on communications and electronics, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Johnson handling mechanical systems and life support, and Hospital Corpsman Second Class Tyler Williams providing medical support and biological warfare expertise. The equipment briefing had been even more classified than the mission parameters. We'd be using experimental deep-sea suits that could theoretically survive the crushing pressure at Challenger Deep, but the technology was so new that we'd be the first human beings to test it in operational conditions. "The suits use a liquid breathing system," explained Dr. Patterson, the civilian scientist who'd been assigned to our mission as technical advisor. "Your lungs will be filled with oxygenated perfluorocarbon fluid that allows you to survive pressure that would otherwise kill you instantly. The psychological adjustment is significant." Johnson had raised the obvious question. What happens if the suits fail at depth? Dr. Patterson's response had been uncomfortably honest. Instantaneous death. The pressure at Challenger Deep would compress your body to approximately the size of a marble in less than a microsecond. But suit failure wasn't our primary concern. According to the intelligence briefing, whatever was broadcasting from the bottom of the Mariana Trench had been sending signals that suggested human technology, human voices, and human distress calls from depths where no human technology should be able to survive. The descent to Challenger Deep took 14 hours in a specialized deep submersible vehicle that had been built specifically for this mission. As we dropped through layers of ocean that had never seen sunlight, our passive sensors began picking up anomalies that defied every briefing we'd received about deep ocean conditions. "Sonar contact," Thompson reported at 25,000 feet depth. "Multiple contacts, actually. Large structures on the ocean floor that aren't showing up on our charts." The structures were massive, geometric formations that extended for miles across the abyssal plain at the bottom of the trench. But they weren't natural geological formations. They showed too much symmetry, too much deliberate design, too much evidence of construction, rather than natural formation. "Those are buildings," Johnson realized, studying the sonar displays. "Somebody built a city down there." Dr. Patterson was frantically checking his equipment, trying to reconcile what we were observing with everything known about deep ocean conditions. "This is impossible. Nothing could survive the pressure at this depth. The water temperature, the lack of sunlight, the crushing force. It's beyond the limits of any known technology." But Williams was monitoring our life support systems and had noticed something that made the impossible seem merely improbable. "The water pressure outside our vehicle is reading lower than it should be at this depth," he reported. "Still lethal to unprotected humans, but significantly less than theoretical calculations suggest." At 30,000 feet depth, we began picking up the signals that had prompted our mission. Radio transmissions, sonar pings, electronic signatures that suggested advanced technology operating in an environment where electronics should fail instantly. And mixed in with the electronic signals were voices. Human voices, speaking English with American accents, broadcasting what sounded like routine military communications from the bottom of the deepest ocean trench on Earth. Deep Station Alpha, this is Deep Station Beta, routine status report. All systems operational, personnel complement full, no issues to report. The voices were clear, professional, following standard military communication protocols. But they were coming from depths where the water pressure should have crushed any communication equipment into molecular fragments. Thompson was trying to establish contact with the transmissions, but her attempts were met with responses that followed proper radio procedure, while revealing information that defied explanation. Unknown vessel, this is Deep Station Alpha. Please identify yourself and state your business in restricted waters. Restricted waters, at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, as if someone had established territorial claims to the deepest point in Earth's oceans. Dr. Patterson was studying the signal characteristics with the focused intensity of a scientist whose fundamental understanding of physics was being challenged. The transmission power required to broadcast from that depth through 36,000 feet of water would exceed the output of a nuclear power plant. Whatever's generating these signals has access to energy sources that don't exist in any known technology. As we approached the ocean floor, our external cameras began revealing structures that challenged everything we thought we knew about deep-sea engineering. Buildings that rose hundreds of feet from the abyssal plain, constructed from materials that showed no signs of corrosion, despite exposure to the most hostile environment on Earth. And there were lights, artificial illumination in patterns that suggested inhabited structures, powered by energy sources that should have been impossible to maintain at such depths. Johnson was studying the structural engineering with an expert's eye for construction techniques. Those buildings are designed to withstand the pressure, but the materials, I don't recognize anything in their construction. It's not steel, not titanium, not any composite I've seen in 15 years of naval engineering. Our submersible settled onto a landing platform that had been constructed specifically to receive vehicles like ours. The platform was equipped with docking clamps, atmospheric seals, and pressure equalization systems that suggested whoever built it understood human technology well enough to accommodate our operational requirements. But the platform was also clearly designed for vessels much larger than our experimental submersible. The docking bays were sized for vehicles that would dwarf any known submarine, with power coupling systems that suggested energy requirements beyond anything in human naval engineering. As we prepared to exit our vehicle and explore the structures in our experimental pressure suits, Thompson made a discovery that changed the entire nature of our mission. "I'm detecting human life signs," she announced, studying her biological sensors. "Multiple contacts, all showing normal human physiological parameters. There are people down here, people, living and working at depths where human survival should be impossible, in structures that shouldn't exist, using technology that defied known science." The airlock system that connected our submersible to the platform worked perfectly, cycling us through pressure equalization procedures that allowed us to exit our vehicle while maintaining life support through our experimental suits. But as we stepped onto the platform, we could see that it had been designed by people who understood human operational requirements. The walkways were sized for human proportions. The controls were positioned for human reach and manipulation. The lighting was calibrated for human vision. Someone had built a facility at the bottom of the ocean specifically for human occupancy. Williams was monitoring our suit systems as we moved through the platform's access corridors. "Atmospheric composition inside these structures shows breathable air," he reported. "Oxygen, nitrogen, trace gases, all within normal parameters for human survival. But maintaining breathable atmosphere at 36,000 feet below sea level would require technology that exceeded anything in human scientific knowledge. The energy requirements alone would be staggering, and the engineering challenges of preventing atmospheric loss under such pressure would be beyond current capabilities." Johnson was examining the construction techniques used in the corridors and chambers we were passing through. "The engineering is human," he concluded, studying joint designs and structural support systems. "These facilities were built by people who understand human needs and human technology, but they were built using capabilities that exceed anything I've seen in classified naval projects. We encountered the first human personnel at what appeared to be a security checkpoint designed to control access to the facility's main areas. They were wearing uniforms that looked like modified U.S. Navy dress, but with insignia I didn't recognize and equipment that seemed more advanced than anything in current military inventory. "Welcome to Deep Station Alpha," one of them said, his voice carrying the professional courtesy of military personnel greeting visitors. "We've been monitoring your descent. Dr. Harrison is expecting you in the main laboratory." But something about their manner bothered me. They were following correct military protocol, displaying appropriate professional behavior, but there was a quality to their movements that seemed rehearsed rather than natural. And when I looked closely at their eyes, I noticed the same detail that had bothered me about our contact at the surface platform. They blinked too slowly, too deliberately, like people who were concentrating on remembering how to perform basic human functions. Thompson was trying to establish communication with our surface support team, but her radio equipment was producing interference patterns that suggested we were now beyond the range of normal military communication systems. "I can't raise the Virginia," she reported, "but I'm picking up communication traffic that suggests this facility maintains contact with multiple surface installations." The main laboratory was a vast chamber filled with equipment I didn't recognize from any scientific or military installation. But the technology was clearly designed for human operation. Control panels at human height, displays calibrated for human vision, interfaces designed for human manipulation. Dr. Harrison was waiting for us at a central control station that displayed information about ocean conditions, facility status, and research projects that fell outside anything in my security clearance. He looked exactly like a career naval scientist, the right age, the right background, the right knowledge of military protocol. But when he spoke, his voice carried that same controlled quality we'd noticed in the platform personnel. "Gentlemen, you're witnessing something that officially doesn't exist," he began, his manner professional but somehow distant. "Deep Station Alpha has been operational for 18 months, conducting research that's critical to national security, but falls outside normal channels of military oversight." Williams was studying Dr. Harrison with his medical training, looking for signs of stress or deception that might explain the unusual quality of his behavior. "Doctor, how long have you been stationed at this facility?" The response came without hesitation. "Since initial construction began 2 years ago. This facility represents the most advanced deep-sea research capability ever developed, but the timeline didn't match our mission briefing. According to our intelligence, the signals from this location had only been detected for 18 months. If construction had begun 2 years ago, why had it taken 6 months before anyone noticed the facility's existence?" Johnson was examining the technology in the laboratory, trying to understand how equipment requiring massive power consumption could operate at such depths. "Doctor, what's your primary power source?" The energy requirements for this facility would exceed anything in current nuclear submarine technology. Dr. Harrison's response was immediate and technically detailed. "Geothermal tapping combined with advanced fuel cell technology provides sufficient power for all operational requirements." Thompson had been monitoring communication traffic within the facility, and her findings suggested that the operation was much larger than we'd been briefed to expect. "I'm detecting transmissions to and from at least 12 other deep-sea installations," she reported, "all using the same communication protocols, all reporting to some kind of central coordination. 12 other installations. Deep Station Alpha wasn't an isolated research facility. It was part of a network of underwater bases that had been constructed without any apparent oversight from normal military channels." Dr. Harrison led us through facility areas that revealed the scope of the research being conducted at depths where human survival should be impossible. Biological laboratories studying deep-sea life forms that didn't match any known species. Engineering workshops developing technology that exceeded current human capabilities. Communication centers maintaining contact with installations around the world. The deep ocean environment provides unique opportunities for research that can't be conducted at surface installations, Dr. Harrison explained as we toured the facilities. Isolation from surface interference, unlimited space for expansion, and access to resources that don't exist in terrestrial environments. But Williams was studying the biological samples in the laboratory, and his medical background was raising questions about the research being conducted. "These specimens don't match any known deep-sea life forms," he observed. "The cellular structures are too complex for organisms that evolved in high-pressure, low-temperature environments." Dr. Harrison's response was immediate and scientifically detailed. "Deep-sea evolution proceeds along pathways that differ significantly from surface biological development. These specimens represent previously unknown adaptive mechanisms." But the specimens Williams was examining showed characteristics that suggested they hadn't evolved naturally. The cellular structures were too organized, too purposeful, too indicative of directed development rather than natural selection. The response came without hesitation. "Advanced materials science combined with pressure distribution techniques allows for sustainable deep-sea construction, but the materials Johnson was examining didn't match anything in classified military research. They were too strong, too resistant to pressure, too indicative of technology that exceeded current human capabilities." As we continued our tour of Deep Station Alpha, I began to notice details that suggested the facility served purposes beyond scientific research. The corridors were designed for rapid movement of large numbers of personnel. The workshops were equipped for mass production of equipment rather than research prototyping. The communication centers were configured for coordinating multiple installations rather than reporting to surface authorities. Deep Station Alpha wasn't just a research facility. It was a manufacturing and coordination center for operations that fell outside normal military oversight. Thompson had been analyzing communication intercepts from the facility's coordination center, and her findings revealed the scope of whatever operation was being conducted from the deep ocean. Traffic analysis suggests these installations are coordinating activities at multiple locations around the world, she reported. Not just research stations, but operational facilities conducting unknown missions. Dr. Harrison was monitoring our activities while providing tour narration, but his behavior was becoming increasingly mechanical as we asked more detailed questions about the facility's operations. The research conducted at these installations is classified beyond normal security protocols, he said when I asked about the facility's mission statement. But we hadn't been briefed about any deep-sea research program, and our mission parameters had suggested we were investigating unknown signals rather than visiting established installations. Williams made a discovery in the biological laboratory that changed everything about how we understood the situation at Deep Station Alpha. The specimens he was examining weren't just unknown species. They were artificially created organisms that had been designed for specific purposes. Organisms that could survive in deep ocean conditions while displaying capabilities that no natural evolution could produce. Johnson had found something equally disturbing in the engineering workshops. The equipment being manufactured here isn't for research purposes, he reported. These are weapons systems, advanced weapons systems designed for underwater combat operations. The workshops were producing torpedoes with guidance systems that exceeded anything in current naval arsenals, underwater vehicles with capabilities that surpassed the most advanced submarines, communication equipment designed for coordinating military operations rather than scientific research. Thompson's analysis of communication traffic confirmed what Johnson had discovered in the workshops. The installations in this network aren't conducting research, she concluded. They're preparing for military operations, large-scale military operations involving underwater combat systems. Dr. Harrison's response to our discoveries was immediate and definitive. Your tour of this facility is complete. You will now be escorted to quarters where you can rest before returning to your surface vessel. But the escort that arrived to guide us consisted of personnel who were no longer bothering to maintain the pretense of normal human behavior. They moved with mechanical precision, communicated through hand signals that suggested telepathic coordination, and displayed the kind of synchronized behavior we'd encountered in other classified operations involving non-human intelligence. We weren't guests at Deep Station Alpha. We were prisoners. Park was the first to notice that our experimental pressure suits were being affected by some kind of field generated within the facility. Life support systems are showing anomalous readings, he reported. Something in this environment is interfering with our equipment. The interference wasn't random equipment failure. It was systematic degradation of our ability to survive outside the facility's controlled environment. Whatever was operating Deep Station Alpha wanted to ensure that we couldn't leave. Rodriguez began examining the facility's construction with an engineer's eye for escape routes and structural weaknesses. The building systems are designed to contain people rather than simply house them, he concluded. This is as much a prison as it is a research facility. Chen had been monitoring communication traffic between Deep Station Alpha and the other installations in the network, and what she discovered revealed the true scope of the operation we'd stumbled into. The network isn't just manufacturing weapons, she reported. They're coordinating the replacement of human military personnel with artificially created organisms, personnel who can operate in environments where normal humans couldn't survive. The deep sea network was creating replacement soldiers designed for underwater operations, personnel who could survive in conditions that would kill normal humans, operatives who could infiltrate human military installations without detection. Dr. Harrison and the other personnel at Deep Station Alpha weren't human. They were artificially created organisms designed to mimic human behavior. Park's analysis of biological samples from the facility confirmed what Chen had discovered through communication intercepts. The organisms being created here are designed to replace human personnel in specific military roles, he announced. They're not just weapons, they're replacement soldiers. As we realized the true nature of Deep Station Alpha and the network of installations it coordinated, our situation became clear. We were witnesses to an invasion that was occurring through replacement rather than conquest. Whoever was operating these deep-sea installations was systematically replacing human military personnel with organisms that could pass for human, while serving purposes that no legitimate human authority would authorize. Rodriguez had been studying the facility's security systems, looking for weaknesses that might allow us to escape and report what we'd discovered. The containment systems are designed to prevent escape, but they're also designed to prevent outside detection, he concluded. If we can disrupt their operational security, we might be able to signal for extraction. But our experimental pressure suits were continuing to degrade under whatever field the facility was generating. We had limited time before our life support systems failed entirely, trapping us at depths where rescue would be impossible. Chen made a desperate attempt to establish communication with our surface support team using the facility's own communication systems. But instead of reaching USS Virginia, her transmissions were intercepted by coordination centers that were managing the replacement operation at installations around the world. The network extends far beyond these deep-sea facilities, she reported. I'm detecting coordination with installations on every continent, operations involving the replacement of military personnel at bases around the world. The scope of the invasion was staggering. While attention was focused on surface threats and conventional military concerns, something had been systematically replacing human military personnel with organisms that served purposes no human authority had authorized. Park made a final analysis of the biological samples he'd collected, trying to understand the nature of the organisms that were replacing human military personnel. They're designed to be superior to normal humans in every measurable category, he concluded. Stronger, faster, more intelligent, and capable of surviving in environments where humans couldn't operate. The replacement organisms weren't just mimicking human military personnel. They were improving upon human capabilities while maintaining enough similarity to avoid detection during casual observation. Rodriguez had found what might be our only chance for escape: a service tunnel that connected Deep Station Alpha to the geological formations that provided the facility's geothermal power. The tunnel leads to natural caverns in the ocean floor, he reported. If we can reach them, we might be able to find a way to the surface. But reaching the tunnel would require fighting our way through facility security systems that were designed to prevent exactly the kind of escape we were attempting, and our degrading pressure suits would make any extended movement through high-pressure environments increasingly dangerous. Chen had made one final discovery in the facility's communication systems that revealed the timeline for whatever operation the network was coordinating. Mass replacement event scheduled for implementation in 72 hours. She announced. Simultaneous activation at all network installations. We had 3 days to escape Deep Station Alpha, reach the surface, and warn someone about an invasion that was occurring through the systematic replacement of military personnel with artificially created organisms. As alarms began sounding throughout the facility and security personnel moved to prevent our escape, I realized that our survival was secondary to ensuring that information about the replacement network reached someone who could take action to prevent it. The organisms that had replaced Dr. Harrison and his staff were moving with mechanical precision to recapture us, but their movements revealed the same limitation we'd observed in other encounters with non-human intelligence. They understood human behavior well enough to mimic it, but they couldn't adapt to situations that fell outside their programmed parameters. Rodriguez used this weakness against them by implementing escape techniques that weren't part of standard military doctrine: improvised explosives created from laboratory equipment, distraction methods based on civilian emergency procedures, and movement patterns that didn't match anything they would have observed in military training. Chen disrupted their coordination by using the facility's own communication systems to generate interference patterns that affected whatever network connected the replacement organisms. Park turned medical equipment into weapons, using his knowledge of biology to target the organism's artificial physiological systems in ways they couldn't counter. But as we fought our way toward the service tunnel that might lead to escape, the facility's systems began implementing containment procedures that were designed to prevent exactly what we were attempting. The corridor leading to the tunnel began flooding with water under pressure that would crush normal humans instantly. The atmospheric controls shifted to gas mixtures that would be toxic to human physiology. The structural systems began sealing access routes that could be used for escape. Deep Station Alpha was designed not just to contain prisoners, but to eliminate them if containment failed. Rodriguez reached the service tunnel first, using his engineering expertise to override the security systems that were trying to prevent our access. Tunnels clear, he called. But the pressure differential is going to be extreme. Our suits might not handle the transition. Chen was still fighting to maintain communication disruption, using her electronics background to keep the replacement organisms from coordinating their response to our escape attempt. Interference is holding, but they're adapting faster than expected. We have maybe 10 minutes before they regain full coordination. Park was treating injuries we'd sustained during our fighting withdrawal, but his medical supplies were limited and our pressure suits were continuing to degrade. Life support is failing, he reported. We need to reach the surface within the next few hours or the suits won't sustain us. As we entered the service tunnel and began our desperate attempt to reach the ocean surface, I could hear the replacement organisms reorganizing behind us. They were implementing pursuit tactics that demonstrated professional military training, but they were combining it with capabilities that exceeded human limitations. The tunnel led through natural cavern systems that connected to geological formations extending toward the surface, but the journey would require navigating through underwater chambers where our failing pressure suits would be our only protection against crushing death. Rodriguez was using his engineering knowledge to guide us through the cavern system, identifying routes that would lead upward while avoiding structural hazards that could trap us in the deep ocean. The geological survey data suggests these formations connect to surface vents, he reported. But we're talking about a vertical climb through miles of underwater caverns. The network wasn't waiting for the 72-hour timeline Chen had discovered. Our escape attempt had triggered immediate implementation of whatever plan they'd been developing for the systematic replacement of human military personnel. Park was monitoring our physiological condition as we climbed through the underwater cavern system, fighting against water pressure that was still lethal despite the reduced pressure within the geological formations. We're approaching the limits of human endurance, he reported. Even with the pressure suits, our bodies can't sustain this level of stress much longer. As we climbed through chambers that had been carved by geological processes over millions of years, we began encountering evidence that we weren't the first humans to use these caverns as an escape route. Equipment fragments, uniform pieces, and human remains suggested that other people had attempted the same desperate journey we were making. Rodriguez found identification tags among the remains that revealed they were military personnel from various nations and time periods. These people were trying to escape from installations like Deep Station Alpha, he concluded. The replacement network has been operational for years, maybe decades. The scope of the invasion was even larger than we'd realized. The systematic replacement of human military personnel had been occurring for long enough to accumulate significant numbers of escape attempts, suggesting that the network controlled installations around the world. Chen was still monitoring communication traffic between network installations, and her intercepts revealed that our escape was being coordinated with pursuit teams from multiple facilities. They're not just trying to recapture us, she reported. They're trying to prevent us from reaching anyone who might be able to take action against the network. The replacement organisms understood that our knowledge of their operations posed a threat to whatever plan they were implementing. They were coordinating resources from around the world to ensure that we didn't survive to report what we'd discovered. As we continued climbing through the underwater cavern system, fighting exhaustion and equipment failure while being pursued by organisms with superior physical capabilities, I realized that our mission had evolved far beyond anything we'd been briefed to expect. We were no longer Navy SEALs conducting a classified reconnaissance operation. We were the only humans who knew about an invasion that was occurring through the systematic replacement of military personnel, and we were running out of time to warn anyone before the replacement network implemented whatever plan they'd been developing. Park made a discovery among the human remains in the caverns that revealed another aspect of the replacement operation. These people weren't just escaping, he announced, studying the equipment and documentation they'd carried. They were gathering intelligence about the network. They were trying to map the scope of the replacement operation. The personnel who had attempted to escape through these caverns weren't random prisoners. They were intelligence operatives who had discovered the existence of the replacement network and had been trying to report their findings to legitimate authorities. Rodriguez found documentation among the remains that showed the network's expansion over several years. Installation locations, personnel replacement schedules, coordination protocols, he reported. These people were trying to expose the entire operation, but they'd all died in these underwater caverns, trying to reach the surface with information that could have prevented the invasion we were now witnessing. Chen intercepted a communication that revealed why none of the previous escape attempts had succeeded. The network maintains pursuit teams specifically designed to prevent information leaks, she announced. They're not just trying to recapture escaped personnel. They're trying to eliminate anyone who knows about their operations. We were being hunted by organisms that had been created specifically to prevent humans from reporting the existence of the replacement network. Organisms with capabilities that exceeded human limitations and coordination that allowed them to track prey through environments where normal humans couldn't survive. As we reached the upper levels of the cavern system and began to detect traces of natural sunlight filtering down from surface openings, Park made a final check of our pressure suits and physiological condition. We're approaching atmospheric pressure levels where the suits might be able to sustain us, he reported. But we've suffered significant damage, and our life support reserves are nearly exhausted. Rodriguez was studying the geological formations that would allow us to reach the surface. There's a natural chimney formation that leads directly to the surface, he announced, but it's a vertical climb through water-filled chambers. If our suits fail during the ascent, we would die within sight of the surface, just like the other military personnel who had tried to escape with information about the replacement network. Chen was still monitoring network communications as we prepared for our final ascent to the surface. Coordination traffic suggests they're implementing the replacement operation at installations worldwide, she reported. Whatever we do when we reach the surface, we need to do it immediately. The replacement network was no longer waiting for optimal conditions. Our escape attempt had triggered the immediate implementation of whatever plan they'd been developing for the systematic replacement of human military personnel. As we began our final ascent through the water-filled chimney that led to the surface, I could hear our pursuers moving through the lower caverns. They were climbing faster than we were, using capabilities that exceeded human limitations, coordinating their pursuit with precision that no normal military unit could achieve. Rodriguez was leading the ascent, using his engineering knowledge to navigate through chambers where one mistake would mean death for all of us. "Surface opening visible," he called as we reached the final chamber. "But I'm detecting movement up there. They've positioned teams at the surface." The replacement network had anticipated our escape route and positioned organisms at the surface to prevent us from reaching anyone who might be able to take action against their operations. Chen was trying to establish communication with any legitimate military authority, but her equipment was detecting interference patterns that suggested the network was jamming all frequencies to prevent us from reporting what we discovered. Park was treating injuries we'd sustained during our ascent, but our medical supplies were exhausted and our pressure suits were failing. "We need to reach atmospheric pressure within the next few minutes," he reported. "The suits won't sustain us much longer." As we prepared to break the surface and face whatever the replacement network had positioned to prevent our escape, I realized that our survival was less important than ensuring that information about the invasion reached someone who could take action to stop it. The network had been systematically replacing human military personnel for years, creating a force of artificially enhanced organisms that could infiltrate and control military installations around the world. And they were ready to implement whatever plan they'd been developing through that infiltration. Rodriguez reached the surface first, using his demolitions expertise to clear the opening that would allow the rest of us to escape the underwater cavern system. "Surface clear of immediate threats," he called, "but I'm detecting movement in the surrounding area." Chen established communication with what appeared to be a legitimate Navy vessel, but the response she received made it clear that the replacement operation had already begun at surface installations. "Unknown personnel, this is USS Montana. You are in restricted waters. Prepare to be taken aboard for debriefing and medical evaluation." But the voice patterns in the transmission carried the same controlled quality we'd learned to recognize in the replacement organisms. The surface extraction team wasn't there to rescue us. They were there to ensure that we didn't survive to report what we'd discovered. As we broke the surface of the Pacific Ocean and faced the final phase of our escape from the replacement network, I realized that we were witnessing the beginning of something that would change the nature of human military operations forever. An invasion that was occurring not through conquest, but through the systematic replacement of human personnel with organisms that could serve purposes no human authority would authorize. And we were the only people who knew it was happening. If you want to hear how we survived the surface extraction and what we discovered about the true scope of the replacement network, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next debrief.